Are there a lot of entrepreneurs in the room right now? Yeah? Okay, that's really good to see. Okay, good, so I'm not just speaking to business people. Now I have a support group. So when I left Thunder Bay, I left because I was into technology more so that could be supported. And things have changed dramatically in the city. And from what I've noticed coming back is that there is an interest in engaging technology, specifically with the onset of AI. So I'm hoping to influence some of you and also say some things about what my success was in business so that you can take it home and maybe go, oh wow, that's a really good idea, or live off that. So I'm hoping to influence that. So I'm going to share something that was said in the intro, which was how I started my first business. Now, I started off working for a ton of different technology companies through the startup.com phase. You guys remember that? You know, stock options like toilet paper? Just, yeah, so I bounced around to a ton of different companies, and every company I worked for got acquired. So I ended up, working for one company, going to Cisco Systems, working for another company, going to Symantec. And while that was happening, I got exposed to this lack of fear that there was so much opportunity to share your creativity. And I guess at one point in my life, I just didn't have any questions about myself. I just woke up one day and I just started doing this stuff with robots. It was my history at NASA where I was redeveloping the software and redeveloping this hardware package every time to create these products and these projects we're working on. And I came up with this idea and said, I'm going to build something that is modular for robotics. So people can build a robot and prototype it without having to go through all of the engineering in the background, right? Kind of like Lego. So when I was doing that, I didn't really have an idea about starting a business. It was more about sharing something with the community. So I put up a YouTube page and I started doing all these different things. And you guys are probably excited to see what's inside here, because I'm a robot guy. So I brought robots. And I brought the first one that I ever made that started my company. And I want to show you what happened. So I was having a lot of struggles. You can't have success without hearing the story of struggles. And during my success, my struggles, I was building this great community and I was making money. And in the first, I'd say about 10 months, we did our first about $1 million without realizing it even had happened. And I'd say it was like me and a couple of friends in my basement, soldering a bunch of circuit boards and me staying up late at night writing all this code. And while I was doing so, I was trying to expand and grow the business. And I needed to manufacture. I needed to start building this company. So I was looking for investment. So I was going to investors with business proposals and business plans and pitch decks, right? And I was going through all these accelerator programs and stuff. And it wasn't until I did this that actually, it's gonna be really funny for you to see, that's kicked off my business. Do you guys know who this is? Okay, so it looks like a toy, because it actually was. And what happened was, I took the technology that I was building, rather than it ended up inside of a big robot or some sort of industrial robot, I thought to myself, what can I do that can, and this, you gotta remember too, this is around the time when WALL-E had, the movie had first come out. So I thought to myself, wouldn't it be great to build something and bring something to life? So I called it teaching old toys new tricks. So I took this old robot, which actually was really funny because the story where I got it from was actually a superstore. So I was in Calgary, I was at Superstore, and I'm waiting to go through the aisle to check out, and this robot's standing there. And you can't hear it, but he's playing the theme song. Hear that? Okay. And do you want to play with him? Okay, so I'll show you. So I built an app, and this one here moves his head around. Okay, and there's a camera, you can all see yourselves on it, real live feed. And then you can move his arms up and down, like that. And then he could even hit this button like this, where he goes. So I built this robot, and it took me a little bit, and then I put up a video the very next day, and I got 1 million views. And that was my first exposure into the, I guess you'd say, like the influencer community, but this is prior to, this is 2011, 2012. So I brought this robot to investor meetings, and that opened up the door to everything. Everything that could move forward, because I took a little simple toy and I gave it life, essentially. And with the platform, I had investors.
Sorry, that was fun.
As you should. Oh, here we go, use cellular data. There we go. And what ended up happening was it opened up the door to investors, it opened up the door to a ton of access to talent, it opened up the door to a great board that was super supportive, and it also allowed me to be able to somewhat have a leg up to all of the people that were trying to get involved in my business, in the sense that I had a lot of technical knowledge where they had a lot of business knowledge, so therefore they kind of needed me. And being somewhat, I mean, I'm up here, I'm supposed to talk about myself, but I consider myself somewhat of a modest individual. You expose yourself to all these people by opening yourself up, and suddenly you have a group of supporters, and everyone started throwing talent at me. So the business went from me in my basement to an office that was 2,000, 3,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet. We raised a bunch of capital, and then we had 3 offices. We had a 500,000 square foot manufacturing facility in Shenzhen, China, and then opened up an office in California, where we started taking investment from different areas geographically. So really, the 4 million robots and everything that's happened to this day started because of this. So I brought this out a few times to a few different, like some schools that I've talked to locally here in Thunder Bay. And I think it's really great that I have something that's like not a trophy, but something that like is an icon that actually I can look at, symbolizes, and it sits inside of my living room on a shelf all the time. Gets to look down at me. So from this, how much more time do I have to talk, Nancy? I don't want to. Okay, because we have a lot to hear from Jason as well. And I did bring another robot to show you the next step of what we created that allowed me to exit the company that I used to fund my most recent venture. Do you guys want to see that one? Do you have time to see that? Yeah? Okay. So you're going to put Wally down here? You're going to miss him. Okay, so my next plan was this. I was actually, believe it or not, in Thunder Bay when I came up with this idea. I was, there you go, yeah. Good thing you didn't do it up here. I was in Thunder Bay, and I was, so what's inside of this robot is a bunch of different technology that you would imagine is super complicated. However, I made it very easy for people to just use and build with. It's like Lego, okay? But because it still requires you to take a toy or take a frame, whether it's metal or whether it's an industrial robot, and modify it to add these components, that makes it very difficult. So I had this guy that I hired that was supposed to be in charge of our sales, and he kept going to education, constantly looking at education. Now, as a tech founder, I kept thinking to myself and picturing these robots being used in industrial automation, used in disaster recovery, used in all these different applications that was not education. I kept thinking to myself, there's no money in education. Do any of you work in education? Okay, there's no money in education, is there? No. There is not. So why would you start a business revolved around education? So this guy that I hired that was supposed to be in charge of sales continually wanted to focus on education. He kept saying there's a market there, there's a market there. I said, it's not gonna happen. I don't believe it. So we went forward a few months where suddenly I started looking at our sales reports and we were having our meetings, and I was starting to see a significant revenue coming from education. Now, there is no money in education, but there is a need for technology. So if you can work with your customer, your technology customer, and negotiate pricing and try to get your product into those environments, you start growing. Now, the trouble with this is that we had this platform which required you to be able to build the robot. So we were trying to sell all these electrical components that schools and students would use to build. And there was another product out there, it's open source called Arduino, that we were essentially in competition with. So the idea was we needed something that was more modular. So I was in Thunder Bay, and I was sitting on my place in the lake, and I was trying to brainstorm some ideas, and I was driving back out west, where you ever have those like moments, some people have them in the shower, some people have them when they're jogging, some people have them when they're working out, where you're just so free in your mind and you just come up with this idea. I came up with an idea, and I got back to Calgary at the time, so I was living, and I built this, and we 3D printed the whole thing, and I mean it was actually me. And have any of you seen these in schools, these robots? No one's seen them here yet? Okay, there are a few. We were in about 100 and something countries by the time the company sold. Essentially, these are, let me hold this for a second. They're modular in the sense like Lego. So you can unclip and modify the robot to turn it into any configuration you want. Okay? Hopefully everyone heard that. So the idea was that this is the first one that I came up with because I wanted something that was human-like, okay? And we also came up with a drone, we came up with a robot that's a hexapod, and you just clip them together. So suddenly this allowed me to take this technology that was powering that and throw it inside of something that you could put inside of a classroom and kids can start programming immediately. So the trouble was, how do you program it? So I wrote the software package with a lot of help of my great talented team at the time. And the software package was the thing that turned out to be the strength of this, not the physical hardware. So we eventually, this company got acquired. I bought back the software. The software now is my new company, and this company became my first customer. Think of it that way. So now, because we're agnostic in the sense that our software can work with any, we're not tied to a specific robot. Don't worry, I'll turn it on. I know you're wondering when it's going to do something. When it was no longer tied to a specific hardware, we now allowed to work with tons of other hardware vendors. Okay, so this became, we once only worked with this, now we work with everyone. So when you come up with ideas and you start thinking of all these different plans, executing that is the only thing that ever holds you back if you're the one who doesn't do it. So a lot of people on my board and a lot of people, my shareholders, are like, I don't think this is a good idea, selling the business and selling the hardware and buying it back. And turned out it was a fantastic idea. So let's turn this guy on. Now, I did something funny with this. When I designed this, not just this guy, but all the other robots, we called it the Revolution series. It was to revolutionize robotics into the classroom. And our customers grew from just being in the classroom to special effects artists like Will Huff, who did Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy and Iron Man and Pirates of the Caribbean, a bunch of movies. And if you watch Iron Man, you'll see that there's some robots inside of his laboratory. All that special effects is all controlled by our software, which has this little hardware computer inside of it that's in the back of this. So it was used for a ton of different things. So this robot, which has got a little secret, his name is JD. When you buy it, it's actually called JD. As you recall, my name is DJ, so it's kind of fun. So let's turn this guy on, and then I don't want to take up any more time, so we got to hear your story too. So, so this app that I'm using could load any robot. I think we have around something like 3,000 apps inside of this particular app. So it's kind of neat. Can you flip that robot upside down, the Wall-E, and turn that switch off for me, please? Yeah. All right. Okay, let's connect to this guy. All right. So this guy is very cool. Primarily because he was named after me, and because he was the first humanoid robot that you can actually buy. Can everyone see him down there okay? No? Okay. Can I? Nancy's gonna hate me right now. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put him on this table, and I'm gonna move things around, okay? All right. So I want people in the back to be able to see this guy, because he can do some fun stuff. All right, how about that? Better? All right, here, I'll make him wave too. Okay, so he's got a camera on him and everything as well. And we did this competition where we had a bunch of schools do things to make the robot do different stuff. And these are all developed by children, which was really fun. I don't have a big table to play with here. So this one was my favorite. I thought that was great. Let's see here. We had a bunch of dances. There's a bunch of other stuff too. Let's see here. I also can make him do, oh, this one's kind of just cute. He's tough. Yeah, he doesn't get tired, right? Until his batteries are out. Yeah, so that's JD, and maybe we can play with him later and answer some questions. But I really wanted to share the things that I did that allowed me to be able to start as the foundation for the success that turned into the sale of the acquisition of my last company, and then using that money to fund a new company, which I'm not sure if I'm smart or or if I'm just crazy. But the greatest thing I think that I've taken from all the ventures that I've executed on and with my current ventures is, again, like I started off by saying, is like removing that filter, removing that thing that blocks you from being able to be successful, and setting yourself an outcome, a goal, just throwing it and hucking at it, and just blinders and just going. And I'm trying to work with local startups as well through the Innovation Center to do messaging framework and brand pillars to be able to identify how companies can identify what their outcomes are, and then work with their outcomes and then trim the company down to be able to just focus on that direct outcome. Because a sale of a business is really decided on three things. You're either selling a business because you have high revenue, you have lots of customers, which equals data, okay? Or you have a lot of product that has IP, right? Those are the three things that you're ever gonna sell a company for. So if you have a business that you want to sell, right, that's essentially how you do it. The other question is, if you don't want to sell business, then you have to decide that you're a different outcome. You don't want your outcome to be based on things that are for sales, right? You want to be based your outcome on revenue, or probably just revenue, I think. But I've always started businesses for the idea that I would be able to sell it and partner with something bigger, something greater, and make something that is more substantial to humanity. Right? So that's always my plan. But I'm going to pass this off to Jason. Okay. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, DJ. That was fantastic. It's always really inspiring, though, like from my own perspective, to see how we're adapting innovation. And, as Charlotte mentioned in the opening and introduction, we have a company out in Saskatoon called All 3 Innovation. But, Saskatoon, very similar to Thunder Bay, small community, very similar characteristics. But, they have done a great job in adopting technology and exactly what you're doing, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Skip the Dish, who I'm sure we all use, was built out of Saskatoon, if I'm not mistaken. But that type of advancement and that messaging of thinking beyond is definitely enlightening, right? And as an entrepreneur, and I'm surprised, and I messed up in my intro. I've actually been married 29 years. Don't tell no way. I didn't forget. I almost forgot my first anniversary, but thank heavens I didn't.
This isn't recorded, is it?
For myself, I grew up, as mentioned, on Lake Helen Reserve, proud member of the Red Rock Indian Band, came from a long line of entrepreneurs. On my grandfather's side, my dad's side, my grandfather, they were historically boat builders. And there was a point in time, to be completely honest with you, that as Indigenous entrepreneurs that were challenged with many barriers, one being the Indian Act, where, and this may be news to you, but as boat builders and people who made their living fishing and harvesting fish, there was a point in time where it was illegal to sell gas-powered engines to First Nation fishermen. How many of you knew that?
Was there a reason?
Because the government at the time felt that we had an unfair advantage because we knew where the fishing grounds were. That was the premise of that decision, right? But my grandparents and a group of brothers were very courageous, I guess, in their thinking, and very intelligent. And they would actually take the engines out of their vehicles and put them in the boats. So if there's a will, there's a way, right? And that's the messaging. As DJ mentioned, and I'm going to take this from a First Nation entrepreneur that did a presentation at the Afida conference recently, lady that owns Cheekbone Beauty. And she equates the message around being an entrepreneur to one of a boxer and a fighter, right? Oftentimes we're getting hit. We're getting hit. Every once in a while we land one. But then you're always taking those blows, right? It's day after day. And the spirit within an entrepreneur is one of that where, you know, you're riding that wave every day. I think many people, the public, seem to believe that, you know, life is all caviar and roses and you know, unfortunately, there's no further thing from the truth, especially in a small business, especially in a startup, right? Where you're many challenges, many obstacles, many days you walk around with a smile on your face, not realizing, people seeing that, holy crap, am I gonna make payroll this week? And you know, you hear those struggles as small business owners, right? And, you know, however, you know, for myself, and, you know, just speaking, you know, been in business since 2010 now, celebrating 15 years. My wife and I own 6 or 7 different businesses. But what motivates me is seeing, you know, taking that risk, the risk we took as a family-owned business, and being able to see how it rewards not only our community, the region, but seeing how it rewards our employees is probably the most gratifying experience that you can have as a small business owner. And a person that has taken your dream. And the fact that people have ultimately invested in you because they've invested their time and money, maybe left a previous position to come work with you and your team. You know, I take that very seriously, and I really do appreciate that, because to me, if they're coming to join us in our journey, they're taking a chance on me, and that's their investment, right? And for me, it's always about when I'm thinking about growing our business or investing in our businesses and going around speaking, I never lose sight of the fact that, you know, it's not just me, it's not just my family, it's the family of those individuals who work alongside of us. And that's truly how I think, right? And as a First Nation business person, and growing up in very modest means, you know, I wasn't rich from the financial perspective, but I was rich in love. And that's something you never take for granted, right? You truly recognize that, you know, and that's what motivates me to this day, you know. And, you know, again, for us, we're going through some very, very tumultuous times right now. I don't think I can remember, even from the last time, you know, the current president of the U.S. served to today. It's definitely crazier than it was. I never thought.
No politics conversation.
4 years it would be crazier, but it is, right? And we're experiencing that right now. But you know, as I said it before, and I'll say it again, that these uncertain times creates an opportunity for us, right? Change only happens through being uncomfortable. Right now, we're living through some very uncomfortable times. But what does that challenge us to do? It challenges us to think differently, move differently. We're seeing it, very proud to be a part of many conversations around what the future looks like for Northwestern Ontario, whether it's mining, energy, infrastructure, transportation. Things are going to look much different in 4 years in our region and in Canada. And why I say that, and very fortunate to get a chance to speak to a lot of students who are either in college, university, or around the region. And my message to them ultimately is that, further what DJ just proved to you, is don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone. Look at opportunities. There's no such thing as a crazy idea, dumb idea. My wife would have probably said differently 15 years ago. But there really is, right? We look at opportunity. And for us, you know, many people probably see me as an advocate for Indigenous business, but really I'm an advocate for the region, because our success also equals your success, right? And that's a message we have to get out there. It's not just about Indigenous business, First Nation business. It's about the region working collectively and collaboratively. And as we see the opportunities, right, one thing that kind of, you know, gives me a little bit of pain, gives me a little bit of frustration, is the fact that we're still losing many opportunities to outside businesses where we have the opportunity here in Thunder Bay and in the region to take advantage of that, right? And one way to do that, and what Charlotte and her team are doing here with the inaugural small business solution event here, is that I'm hoping it inspires people. I'm hoping we're doing a great job of inspiring small business owners, right? Because we need that support. We truly do. You know, oftentimes we hear about the big box stores, but the reality of it is, and hopefully nobody gets offended by this, but it's not the big box stores that are supporting your sports teams, your local organizations. It is the small business owners that are probably more willing to cut you a check to sponsor your kid than the big box stores. And we need you. And also, they're big employers, I get that. But it's the folks that don't have the large marketing budgets to go out and put their name out there and attend every event, because we do get inundated with conferences. We got to be strategic in how we spend our money, right? But it's important that we work together. We work collaboratively, right? And, you know, again, for myself and my family, in my mind, I'm not only, you know, affecting change within my wife and I, it is about inspiring the youth, and especially coming from First Nations, where many of us live in poverty. And one of the things that's, you know, we're very proud to have launched Warrior Engineering about 4 years ago. One of the motivators for that is that growing up on Lake Helen, I've never seen any Indigenous or First Nation engineers. I've seen some technicians, not a lot of engineers. So our goal within Warrior is to inspire our people to look at the technical side of business. And, you know, as we're developing projects, whether it's renewable energy projects, nuclear, you name it, to get engaged, right? We have to be inspired. We have to inspire each other. And that really is my message. And it really is about, you know, again, without risk. I'm sure DJ had a lot of risk. I know I had a lot of risk, but there really is no reward, right? And that's what we really need to do, is we need to, again, inspire each other, inspire our people, because it's going to take all of us, every one of us that are in this room, in this country, in this region, to be successful as we navigate these waters. And you know, again, it's events like this where many of our businesses have spent time and money to come out here, showcase their products and services to you. So I really, you know, will, again, you know, encourage you to get engaged, have a conversation with people. But trust me, like I'm sure DJ has learned through his innovation and developing his technology, that, you know, it's through conversation, it's building that large network of people that support you. Because without the support of our community, our friends, you know, and colleagues, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't be celebrating 15 years in business, right? And hopefully we hit 25 years, and hopefully I'm retired at 25. Yeah, no, I truly appreciate the opportunity that the Chamber has given us to share our voices and share our challenges, right? Because and the successes, because it's important that all those messages get shared. And we give you an ear, you give us an ear, right? And yeah, that's about all I have to share.
Thank you so much for sharing your entrepreneurial journey. Now, I know we've got a lot of people in the room who probably have some questions. They want to dig into your story. So we've got a few minutes for questions. Who wants to go first to ask a question to one of our inspired and inspiring entrepreneurs? Okay, I'll get started. Where did you get the money to get that first thing going? How did that happen? Why don't we start with Jason on that?
Honestly, it wasn't, you know, unfortunately, I never had a rich uncle that I could go borrow money from. But it was ultimately, it was an opportunity, and it was one of my former employers, Mr. Luc Drapeau, who was general manager at the sawmill, and my friends at Confederation College that gave us our first contract. It was a $30,000 contract to deliver training, employment training at the sawmill. We built the program, we delivered the training, and that was my first ever contract. So I owe kudos to them for having the confidence to give us an opportunity to build a program. It was also Anishinaabe Employment and Training, and I don't see him here, but Vernon Ogama was a big catalyst to give us the opportunity. So really it is, they took a chance on us. We hit it out of the ballpark. Very proud to say that when we developed the program, delivered the program, we had 9 Indigenous participants within the program. And we had 100% completion. We never lost one student to that program, which was huge for us. So yeah, that was our start.
Awesome. EJ?
Well, I'm gonna have a very different answer because as you know, I came from the West Coast and also the Silicon Valley. I spent quite a bit of time there. And I'm still trying to Thunder Bay wash myself and work back into society here. It's very different out west, and companies are very different as well. And you've seen this in movies, and any of you guys have watched like the TV show Silicon Valley. You guys seen that show? Anyone know that one? If you haven't seen Silicon Valley, Netflix it or whatever you're using, watch it. It's actually pretty funny because you'll see what my lifestyle was actually like. How I got money? Well, as I mentioned, I worked for a lot of different companies, a lot of different startups and .com. I was lucky enough to have a really strong technical background from my family. Do you guys remember Ron's Virtual World? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ron was my dad. So I grew up around technology, and we actually at one point my family had owned 49% of Apple Canada back in the early 1980s. So I was involved heavily into technology. So when I left Thunder Bay, I just worked for a lot of startup companies, and they would, like I said, stock options, company sells, we progress. So when I went to start my business, I didn't know another model. I didn't know how to just find that customer, right? I just knew raise capital, invest into talent, surround yourself with people that fill in your knowledge gaps, move to the next stage, keep doing it, right? And I mentioned shoot yourself a goal. And so my very first, when I said we made our first $1 million in the first 10 months, that happened without us even blinking our eye. And we did that with my funding that I put into the business from my previous sales of other businesses. And then from that, I started raising capital. So have any of you ever raised capital before? Okay, we have one hand of raising capital. So there's different ways of raising capital. You go into the bank is raising capital. Honestly, there's no difference. Getting a loan. How many of you have a loan? You raise capital, okay? At the end of the day, you owe money to somebody. When you don't get free money. So if any of you are thinking of raising capital, that you haven't. Okay, there's a few hands of people who wishing they were. Okay, it is dangerous. If any of you want to talk to me about that, what it's like, because I went through actual VC funds, like large VC funds. You might want to bounce some ideas off me. I'm totally okay to chat with anybody. But it does rob you of your direction. It robs you of your personality. It robs you of everything internal that you started the business for. So you fight 2 battles. You're fighting the VCs. The VCs have a board member that is constantly, trying to redirect your business and everything. So answering the question about where to get your funding from in a startup, especially in the technology world, is a more complicated answer, but I'm happy to chat with anybody after this.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody else with a question?
Do you guys have mentors that have helped you through your journey, or did you kind of figure this out on your own?
Do you have mentors that have helped you through your journey, or have you figured it out on your own? Jason?
I think for myself, I've always been a person who's been very observant, right? Right from the days, like I was your typical Northern Ontario person, I guess. I went to school in Red Rock High, and as soon as I graduated, I went to college, but working part-time at the mill, the plywood mill in Nipigon. And throughout that process, throughout my career, whether I was working for myself or somebody else, every manager, supervisor, business associate I'd seen, I would watch and I would study their actions, how they moved, right, what they did. One of the great lessons I learned was during my time, and again, I have to give kudos to Mr. Drapeau at the time, was that we would do these weekly business review meetings, and I learned so much about KPIs and how it affected our business, how it affected our business performance, because I never worked with anybody that was that transparent, right, with business, and how it really, how it inspired me as an employee to understand how my actions were impacting the business, right? And I think I do that to this day. So if you see me looking at you funny, that's me studying you. I'm joking.
That explains it.
Yeah. but it really is though. It's the good and the bad. I've always constantly, you know what, I would do this exact same way you did it, or I would do this a little differently. That's just how I'm wired, I guess. But I read a statement the other day on social media about, and I've adopted this for years. It's every employer I've ever had, I treated that business like it's my own. And I think that's a different perspective. I wasn't there to just get a paycheck and that sort of thing. I've always gone in with that perspective that I'm here to treat this business as if it was my own. Because at the end of the day, that's my livelihood. That business goes down and it fails, you're looking for a job, right? So I think it's a mind shift in that regard where I've always adopted that where, I'm giving, if I'm here, if I'm putting my socks and shoes on to go to this place, I'm gonna go. And I was at a point, when I decided that wasn't inspiring me anymore, I knew at that point it was time to move on, right? But that's, for me, that's how I operate, that's what motivates me.
You were an entrepreneur since
Absolutely.
day one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so mentor, yeah, that's interesting. I don't know what type, there's different types of entrepreneurs. There's a type of entrepreneur that is a different type of business, right, that entrepreneurs generate, is you're creating a product, you're creating a service, or you're innovating. So obviously I come from the innovation space. The innovation space is tough because mentorship really can sometimes fall short because it's like, I love colleges. Colleges are great, but you're learning from somebody who was in the trade 10, 15 years ago. So you're learning the fundamentals. You're learning how the 2x4 was made in order to build the house by using the 2x4, right? So with mentorship, I went through a lot of heartache, a lot of friction, and I actually created, I wouldn't say enemies, but nowadays I think they understand, but a lot of people were disappointed they couldn't help because they sit down with me. I'm on my own, I'm an island, and I'm looking for support. I'm looking for that mentorship. And I sit down with somebody and I'm like, oh man, this person can't relate to me whatsoever. But you're trying to please them by allowing them to feel that when they leave the room, they helped you. And the next thing you know, they call you back like, hey, our first date was great, let's go on a second. I'm like, I'm not gonna ghost you, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know how I can use you right now, right? So it took me a while to learn how to redirect mentorship opportunities. But what I ended up learning, and this is, I think, what you can take away from it, is mentorship for me was more about finding people that can fill my knowledge gaps in the sense that they can actually execute on a task. So if it was something to do with hiring or building out a business plan or accounting, forecasting, all of these different things, marketing, all these different things, I would try to find people that were experts in that knowledge, where it was a knowledge gap for myself. So it wasn't so much that I had mentorship as that I would always try to build a team around me, a fortress around me of knowledge that I just didn't know. Because as an entrepreneur, you can't know everything. As much as you want to, you can mop the floors, you can do all the different things that you have to do, but don't try to take on the things that you don't enjoy. If you don't wake up in the morning wanting to do it, hire someone to do it. That's my advice for mentorship.
Perfect. We've got time for one more question, if there is one. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you for sharing both. So my question would be, what was the biggest turning point during your journey of growing process, and what was the biggest turning point?
Biggest turning point in your journey, where things kind of clicked for you. Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Okay. Okay. You want me to go first? Okay. Biggest turning point. Well, see, that's good. I got to be honest with you. I drove here this morning thinking about questions, and that was probably one of the questions I was fearing the most. Because, and the reason why is, I'll tell you what went through my head. I don't know if there's a single point that I can pinpoint that was a turning point or was the most successful part. You want to hear success stories. I don't know if I will tell you I'm successful until maybe on my deathbed, because I'm constantly trying to help people around me, whether it's through technology or it's through advice. And this is something you hear me say a lot, and many of the companies here that I've worked with. If you ask me for advice, I'll be like, I can't give you an advice or an opinion. I can tell you a story because I don't have any buy-in in your organization. The biggest trouble I had was somebody telling me how I should run my business when nothing I did affected them. And I'm very empathetic towards that because I experienced it a ton. I had an entire business, so it's easier for me to answer questions about the business I can pinpoint where things went off the rails because, and a lot of times it's because I would have listened to somebody and taken advice because I took money or I took funding or I took some sort of partnership. But I would like to say, because I do want to answer your question and I want to take it seriously, is that I think the turning point for my business was not funding. It was probably the lack of. The moment where I realized I didn't need funding to survive. The day I didn't look at the bank account and go, how am I going to pay my staff? I think that was the biggest turning point. Now, was there action that led up to it? A lot of heartache and struggles, a lot of sweat, waking up in my sweats in the morning. Literally, there was a lot of that. But it's funny because we didn't always have a lot of financial troubles because we had so much financial support. The trouble is how to utilize those financial resources correctly. And I know a lot of people in startup world hear that and they go, oh, I don't know how to relate to that. It must have been nice to have money. It's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you have too much of something, but not enough of something else. Right? You have too much ammo, but no guns to put it in. Too many guns, no ammo to put it, It's however you want to look at it. So I had too much of something, not enough of something else. So my turning point literally was waking up one day and going, I could pay everyone and I could still buy dinner.
Jason, did you have a turning point?
Yeah, I think ultimately at the end of the day, obviously with owning multiple businesses, there are many different challenges for each. But for us, I guess ultimately, and this is always one I touch on kind of tongue in cheek a little bit because from the Warrior Supply business perspective, pre-COVID, I was probably about 3 months out from closing our doors because things just weren't working. Basically I invested my life savings into this business and we just negotiated also the purchase of the office supplier and I'm like, COVID hit and I'm like, oh my God, I just sunk myself. Like, what the hell did I just do? But it was actually through our perseverance and the ability to source products in a global pandemic that many of the large suppliers couldn't do that completely shifted our business. We did a complete 180 where we picked up 250, 300 new customers and we were fortunate enough to have a great network of people that allowed us access to these products that many people that didn't have access to. But we went into that change, I guess, or shift and realized that this was an opportunity for us. But we went into that point in time in our business where we made the conscious decision that, once things solidified and prices started coming down, because they were crazy up front, and we know it, that we were going to pass those savings on to our customers right away. As soon as they came, as soon as things started, getting back to normal, and we agreed as a company that, we're going to focus in on good old-fashioned service the heck out of our customers, ensuring that we're very transparent and treating our customers as family. And I think that was ultimately the turning point on the Warrior Supply side that really changed our business for us. That we had cash, we were, it was crazy times, but it allowed us to grow and transition. But what it also did for us, it was also showed to our customers that in a time of challenge where people couldn't access products, we as a small business in Thunder Bay, Ontario, were able to access products that people couldn't get. And I think that demonstrated to a lot of people that, we're not just, a small little business with limited network and limited reach. We were proving to people that, we can get you a million face masks and get it to you the next day. We did it, right? So that was the turning point. And I think I'm probably just a darn fool because I keep looking at opportunities when I should be saying no, because I think it is really the entrepreneurial spirit within me that, that really is about, as DJ mentioned, it's about making change. And making change not only for myself and my family, but for the region, right? And again, for me, my motivation is honestly, is inspiring people. Right, like I said, I laugh and joke. I grew up on toast and tea and wiener water soup, but it's the honest to God truth. Right? I'm not kidding you. And we want to make something of ourselves so that, I'll tell you this quickly here because I know I'm standing in the way of lunch here. But that within Indigenous people and Indigenous communities, we still run into a lot of challenges around lateral violence And I encourage people, especially if our First Nation Indigenous businesses, don't be afraid to celebrate your successes. Be proud of yourself, be proud of your accomplishments. Because the unfortunate truth is the lineup to give you a boot in the pants is often longer than the one to give you a pat in the back. And be sure to celebrate each and every one of your successes, because it's important. That's what keeps you motivated, right? And again, like I said, anybody that supports our community, our region, whether it's our business, please support your local businesses. We need your support every day, right? To keep the lights on, to keep funding these organizations that bring, healthy living, sports events, you name it, to our community. Our Chamber of Commerce, make sure, we're encouraging other small businesses that are looking to do business in Northern Ontario. The Chamber of Commerce is always looking for new members. I know, I termed out, but I always make my plug for the Chamber of Commerce. Get involved, get active, right? Because we need that voice, right? Big question.
And we need a big technology company.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.